In our next series of videos, we're going to be talking about some paragraph formatting features. In this first one, we're going to look at some indentation. And in order to do that, we want to have a Word document open. And I would suggest, as you go through this video, have a document open as well, and you can pause and replay the video and kind of do the examples with me as we're going along. But with indentation, first thing we need to do is get some paragraphs on the page. Well, instead of us sitting here and typing up a bunch of paragraphs, a quick way to get just sample text to work with is to type equals RAND, and in parentheses we're going to say we want, let's do 2 paragraphs with 10 sentences in them. Okay, so we'll end our parentheses, press enter, and voila, we have 2 paragraphs of text. And if you actually want to read through these, it will give you some tips on Word. We're not going to take time to do that right now, though. Alright, the first thing with indentation is going to be looking at what we call a first line indent. Now don't let this term throw you off. It just means you indent your paragraphs like your teachers have taught you to for years. When I ask students, how do you indent on the computer? Well, there's a few different ways, but they always say, well, it's 5 spaces. Well, no, don't ever catch yourself pressing the space bar like this to get the paragraph to indent. There are much better ways to use Word. One way is you can simply just use your tab key on the keyboard, and it will move the first line of the paragraph over 1/2 inch, leaving every other line on that left hand margin. Another way to do the entire document all at once is just to simply select all of your text, and we've gone over the keyboard shortcut Control-A to do that. So we select everything, and you notice here, if you're on your Home tab, you've got a whole section about paragraph. If we would expand this menu, there's a little arrow there. If you expand that dialog box, you actually can type in and make more changes. So what we want to look at is under the indentation section, we want to click on Special and choose First Line. Now notice it went ahead and populated the amount here as 1/2 inch, which is how long we want our indentation to be. So I'm just going to leave that alone, and I'm just going to come down here and press OK. And notice now both of my paragraphs are indented, and I did it with just a click of a couple of buttons. Alright, so there's first line indent. Well, let's undo that. Let's look at another kind of indentation. The next kind is going to be what we call a hanging indent. Okay, so let's undo our first line indent. Remember, Control-Z to undo. For a hanging indent, we're going to select all of our text. We're going to go back to that paragraph dialog box we were looking at just a minute ago. And under Special, and choose, instead of choosing first line, we're going to choose hanging. We're going to leave it 1/2 inch, and we're going to press OK. Now notice the change that made there. The first line is on the left-hand margin now, and every line for the rest of the paragraph is indented 1/2 inch. When, the most common time that you guys will be working with hanging indents is with MLA. And we talk about that later on in another video. So there's hanging indent, meaning first line on the left-hand margin, every line below it moved in or indented, however far the user specifies. Alright, let's go ahead and undo that. And the last type of indentation we're going to talk about is how to indent like an entire section. Let's say that we had a really long quote in an MLA paragraph, and we want to draw special attention to it. So I'm going to say that that is going to be this part right here. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and drop it down. So it's like its own little paragraph now, this whole section. So we're going to highlight this section because you have to highlight before you go to make a change so Word knows what to change. And we're going to go back to our paragraph dialog box. And what we want to do here is, instead of the paragraph being on the left and right margin where the rest of the paragraphs are, we want to bring that in a little bit. So we want the paragraph to start about here and end about here in all the lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to indent the left side 1/2 inch, and we're going to indent the right side 1/2 inch. And notice the change that happens when I press OK. Now our paragraph or our quote or whatever it is you've selected is indented on both the left and the right margins, and it just kind of draws special attention to something, especially when you're working with MLA research papers. I know I refer to them a lot, but if you have a quote that's more than 4 lines long, and you'll learn this later, you have to make sure that it's indented like this right here. So those are the types of indentation that you'll be expected to know, so make sure that you open up a document and practice with them. And in our next section, we're going to be talking about the 4 types of alignments.